Hey guys, hashtag spooky here with a storytime video. Why do I call myself hashtag spooky? Because everything I make ends up being hashtag spooky. If you're watching this, that means my second comic, Coffee House of Doom, has launched. It's a cute collection of horror stories that all take place inside a coffee shop. I want to talk about how I landed my very first publishing deal, as I feel like there's a really interesting story behind it. All it really took for me to break into the comic industry was for me to travel 2,000 miles and meet somebody by chance, but you know what? If I can do it, so can you. And I feel like most how to get published videos are a little too aggressive. They're a little bit on the, you have to work yourself to death, dedicate yourself to 900-hour work weeks, forget about your wife and kids, your child shouldn't even know your first name. I assure you that if you really want to get published, be it novel, comic, or whatever, all you need are three simple things: a good idea, self-confidence, and a solid network. So let me tell you all about how I ended up getting a publishing deal by accident. So all the way back in 2019, an era I'm super nostalgic for, by the way. Remember when you could just go outside and do things? You could see your friends, you could see your family, you could go to conventions. You didn't have to worry about making yourself sick or making the people around you sick. You could just do things. Over 100 years ago in 2019, I heard about a little thing called TCAF. TCAF stands for Toronto Comic Arts Festival, and their headliner for that year was Junji Ito, my last living idol. For those living under a rock, Ito-san is a horror mangaka, best known for his tales of cosmic and body horror. He is the undisputed king when it comes to horror manga. This was his very first North American appearance, and come hell or high water, I was going to be there. I booked a flight from Seattle, Washington to Toronto, Ontario. I ended up going to this, and it changed my life for the better. Spoiler alert, that's where I ended up getting my most prized possession, a copy of Junji Ito's adaptation of Frankenstein. Now, what makes this particular book my prized possession? Maybe it's because it's autographed by the legend himself. Let's rewind a little bit before I left for the trip. See, at the time, I was a struggling writer. I mean, I still kind of am a struggling writer, but I was definitely struggling a lot more back then. My background was more in filmmaking and screenwriting, so I would write these little screenplays, send them off to potential producers, and every single time I'd get a very nice email explaining, you have some storytelling chops, but there is no way in hell we are ever going to produce something this wild. It's just too expensive. I'm sorry. At the same time, I was also really struggling to write this idea I had for a short story called Parasocial. When I first came up with this idea, I wanted it to be a short horror film. So I sat down and I really tried my hardest, and I wrote probably the worst script ever made by any human ever. It was drivel. It simply just didn't work as a movie. Not only did it not work as a movie, I could just see the potential problems I would have trying to get this made down the line. Producers would want to stay away from it because it's a horror film that tackles a slightly edgy topic. For that exact same reason, it would also be very hard to find a cast. So I wanted to find different forms of storytelling, and I started doing some research. Eventually, I learned how to write comic book scripts, and I discovered that this really was like the medium for me. It blends the visual storytelling of cinema with the descriptive writing of prose. Prose? How do I say words? So I sat down at my writing desk, determined to take this story that I've been struggling with and turn it into a comic book. Before I knew it, I had the best thing I've ever written right in front of me. I had to reread it a few times to make sure that I had actually written this thing, right? This wasn't just like me falling asleep at my computer and somebody broke into my house and wrote something incredible. This was me. This was my voice telling a really cool story. I was really happy with how it turned out. As excited as I was for this script, at the same time, I was just as scared. Because here I am with this brand new script that I love, but I have no idea how to get it made. I have no artistic talent of my own, and even if I did, I don't know who to approach with a final comic book, right? I'm not too sure what the etiquette was. Do I approach an artist and send them the script and go, hey, how much would it cost to get you to illustrate this? Do I approach like an agency or something like that, and then they figure out the best artist to go? But I saw the golden opportunity in front of me with TCAF. Here was a convention filled with working professionals, all of which were approachable with their own booths, and I just had to ask them one question. Hey, How did you get started in comic books? I have a script. I really don't know where to go from here. And I would just let that knowledge pour into me and figure out a game plan after that, right? Later that night, I'm at a networking event. It's this huge party. There's got to be at least 300, 400 people in this one building. And here I am sitting in the middle of it, too frozen to say anything. I am scared out of my mind. I am 2,000 miles away from home. I am in a room filled with complete strangers, most of which are established professionals. So in my mind, I had like this idea of if I go up to somebody and say, hey, I'm trying to get this thing off the ground, they would just laugh at me and go, come back when you've actually published something, kid. Don't waste my time. But I had no choice but to just suck it up. I mean, to borrow one of my favorite phrases, I didn't come this far just to come this far. I didn't travel 2,000 miles just to get here, freeze up before the finish line, and go home empty-handed. Well, I wasn't empty-handed. I mean, I did have like my body weight in comic books at this point, but you know what I mean. That's when I bumped into somebody on accident. I kind of just felt like this bump on my back, and I turn around and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you there. It must have been my fault that I bumped into you, right? They turn around, they say hello. We start chit-chatting. Turns out we have a lot in common. We really hit it off. And that's how I ended up meeting my business partner and writing genius, Danny Gorney. See, Danny was a local to Toronto, and he was super nice to me. He basically took me under his wing and was like, yeah, let's meet up tomorrow. I would love to go to a few panels with you. I'll also give you a tour of the city. And let's just talk about comics and things that you want to create. So we did, and we had a great time. So I fly back home with what I can only describe as a metric fuck ton of comic books, and I start tearing through these things. I'm more inspired than ever to finally create. And that's when my phone rings, and it's Danny. He called me up and asked me, hey, do you have just a script laying around? I'm kind of tired of not being published, aren't you? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm tired of not being published. So I dig through my laptop, I find the script for Parasocial, I send that off to him. He sends me an email back going, besides all of the blatant spelling mistakes, I feel like this is actually great and we can work with it. Turns out Danny had a connection with the artist Damien Canta. Damien is a super talented artist in the Toronto area. I've left a link to his website down below if anyone's curious. The man was talented enough to illustrate both of our comics in a very short amount of time. That's really hard to do. How he did it and did it so well will always be a mystery to me. But now we had a plan. We had scripts. We had an artist. And the only thing that was really missing at this point was cash. So we decided to do the most logical step from there, and that was go the indie route with Kickstarter. It was a real team effort to get our Kickstarter up and running. Danny wrote all the copy that went onto our Kickstarter page. Damien illustrated all of the amazing graphics that we used, and I came up with the Kickstarter video. A few days before we were scheduled to launch, Danny reached out to the founder of Bloody Gore Comics. We sent him a very nice email that said if he'd be interested in publishing us, and he sent us an email back that just said, I can't say no to art this good. So now we had a publisher, like a real ISBN and everything. We hit launch, and by some miracle, we ended up getting funded within less than 24 hours. Shout outs to all our Kickstarter backers. I love you. Mwah. The rest, as they say, is history. I will spare you all the boring details about how we did our fulfillment, but now our book is listed on both Bloody Gore Comics' website and Comixology. Both in the description down below if you're curious. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But that's why I say I got a publishing deal on accident. What are the odds that I would meet somebody in a foreign country and we would end up publishing a book together, right? That's almost like winning the lottery. It goes to show what will really happen if you put yourself out there and you're not afraid of failure. This might sound weird, but failure is actually a good thing. You can learn a lot through failure. And true failure is when you give up. That's why I like telling this story, because I feel like there's a lot of creatives out there who are going through the same struggles I am and will probably relate to this somehow in some way. I want you to know, that idea that you have in your head, it is possible to make it real. I had no idea how to get started, and I was completely frozen by fear. It was until I stepped out of my comfort zone just a little bit, I had pretty much stumbled onto my goal by accident. If I had any advice for people struggling to make their creative dreams come true, it is start to network. You will be surprised what happens when you finally start asking for the help that you need. Figure out local networking events in your area, and also see if you can find any online groups, especially if they're international groups as well. Think globally. Think big. Get to know people, establish real relationships, and get the work done. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. I couldn't get this far if it wasn't for my team or my backers. You would be surprised to know how many people in your circle are really willing to support you and to show that support with a little bit of cash. I think now really is the best time to be a creative. Be it if you're into comics, movies, whatever it is that you want to make. Get the thing made. Get out there. It is possible. I believe in you, random stranger who is watching this video. I know you can do it. That's my story. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please leave a like and comment down below. I'd really appreciate it. Please also hit subscribe if you want to find more videos on this channel. I tackle all sorts of horror subjects. If you're curious about the horror that I make, you can find links in the description to both House of Doom and Coffee House of Doom down below. That's it from me. Until we meet again, take care and stay spooky, my friends.